folks. I've seen you boys all along. Anyway, folks, you are all very welcome. Fáilte wrote Arash Arish. Everybody, welcome back from your summer holidays. I'm sure you all been away and have a really, really great time. Any of you that haven't gone yet, well, enjoy them, okay? Yeah, there's obviously the bus tours around town, see sights, Jill Way, supporting the local economy.
Green one, is it?
That's it, no, the red one, no, they're Dublin bus, they're losing millions. Don't be mentioning them. The difference between the tour I do in town on the red bus and the green bus is that on the red bus we tell better lies. Yeah, and the guides are much sexier. The drivers as well. Yeah, that's the difference. Anyway, folks, we're all very welcome back. Just one, the usual housekeeping matters. If you wouldn't mind putting your mobile phones on silent, please. In the event of a fire, our exits are located. We have two exits, one to the back of the hall here and one to the right hand side. It's a pity, I was going to do the whole Ryanair thing there.
No thanks.
No great relevance. I might blow a trumpet at the end of the lecture. Okay, the signal the end. The usual folk, just one or two small little, we have a donation box at the back of the hall for which we're very, very grateful, folks, and thanks to your voluntary contributions and all, pleased to know that our historical society is in a very healthy state and well able to cover our stationery expenses. And of course, thanks to South Dublin County Council and the library here for providing this great facility. If you ever want to pick up any of our DVDs of any of the lectures, folks, they're all online. So David's wonderful work there. If you want to view it later on, if you miss a lecture, just if you go to Facebook, if you log on to Tala Historical Society, we have 592 likes on that page. So share it with your friends, tell everybody about it. You've seen that the bookmark is available also, folks. They have them around the house there, yeah?
Well, if I might just add, there's going to be a tour of the Maritime Museum on the day that we go to Dundee.
Oh, excellent. So tour of the Maritime Museum. I think actually, at the AGM we actually get notice of it. But a tour of the Maritime Museum as well, yeah, which I forgot about. Thank you very much. And then now, without further ado, just introduce Mick Kinahan to you here. Mick here is going to give us a talk and his views on highways to leisureways, and I'm very much looking forward to it. So without further ado, straight over to you, Mick.
Thank you. You mentioned the Maritime Museum. It's an absolutely wonderful place to go to see, and some of my comrades are members of the Inland Waterways Association of Ireland, so they've been around boats all their lives. Before I start, have we boaters here, or have we people that are involved in canals or anything? It's just to get an idea. I don't want to be boring people with stuff that's, Okay. My name is Mick Kinahan, or better known as Mick Kinahan all around the place. I've been a member of the Inland Waterways for a long, long period of time. And my love of the canals was generated in Ballinferry, of all places. I lived about a half a mile away from the canal, and my mother, being a country woman, she had a terrible fear of canals, but not of rivers for some reason or other. But when she discovered that I was going to the canal, she banned me. So at some stage or other, I got a couple of shillings, or probably sixpence, or 1 and 6pence, and bought myself a fishing rod, and used to say to the mother with the young fella next door, we're going fishing. And she associated fishing with rivers, so before we went to the canals, we never caught a fish. But that's where I was fascinated looking at the locks and all of that sort of thing. I saw very few boats on it. I have no recollection of actually ever seeing, and I'm talking about the 50s. I would have been probably only 5 or, well, more than that, maybe 6 or 7 or 8 years of age. But that's in the 60s, late 50s into the 60s. I've no recollection of ever seeing a barge on it. But we'll find out later why that was.
Whereabouts the bike going?
Cladder Road.
Oh, really?
Okay.
It must have known the O'Briens.
Yeah. Anyway, that's a different lecture. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Inland Waterways Association of Ireland. the canal building, the history of the Grand Canal, the boats, and then we'll reach some conclusion as to where we're going with the canals. That's an example of one of the oldest boats that is on the system. It was built in Britain around 1837. It's still in use today. It was originally a gentleman's steam launch. It was built for one of the directors of the Grand Canal Company, and he brought it into Ireland. It is now in private hands, and the individual who owns it at this point in time, you can hear most Friday nights on the radio when they do the maritime reports. Colin Becker is his name, but that boat is over 150 years old, and it looks as good today as it did 150 years ago. The IWAI was founded in 1954. We've about 3,500 members in 20 branches. That's actually expanded into 22 branches over the last year, and they're right across Ireland. It's both it's a cross-border organisation. We have 6 branches in Northern Ireland. The IWAI was founded back in the 50s, in 1954, to try and stop them putting low-level bridges on the River Shannon. It was formed here in Dublin, and the first branch was formed in Athlone. And fortunately, the battle that took place over that period of time brought about a situation that's there today. You can see the upper picture is in Athlone, and you have 18 feet of clearance. If they had been allowed to go ahead with the bridges at that particular time, the bridges would have been so low you would be lucky to get a own boat under them, as they have done in other places, and we've lost a lot of canals because of that. And we refer to it as vandalism by local authorities, so we're all the time fighting with them. The other one in Termonbarry and in a few other places along the Shannon, they have lifting bridges now, so you can actually go up and down on them. There's another bridge, which is a lifting bridge on one of the canals, which is the Royal, which I'm not going to talk about tonight, but I'm going to talk more about the Grand Canal. But there's one on the Royal Canal which gives us unbelievable trouble every year trying to bring boats in. It's Waterways Ireland own it, and Waterways Ireland is the cross-border organisation that looks after all the inland waterways, the Barrow and the Shannon and the both canals, and Lough Erne and the canals, the Shannon Erne waterway up there. Anyway, the Dublin branch was born in 1964, and we celebrated 50 years this year, as the organisation celebrated 60 years. And it was born out of, again, a local authority, Dublin Corpo at the time. They wanted to drop a sewer pipe into the Grand Canal, the circular line that goes down into the Grand Canal basin, and to fill it in and turn the whole thing into an M50. But we won that one, beyond the shadow of a doubt, and the proof is there. The whole cabinet has been looking onto it for years and years, and this is what has become of the Grand Canal basin, with the theatre on the left-hand side there, and the Mercer Hotel, and there's some of the boats that we bring to Dublin every year. Somebody said they've never seen boats going down through Cumberland and Dolphin's Barn. Every year in Dublin, and I've been chair and vice chair and dog's body of the Dublin branch of the Inland Waterways for a long period of time. But this year we brought in 77 boats. I have photographs here, you can have a look at them afterwards of the amount of boats that we brought in. Okay, we're not just, we don't just go out and protest about things, we actually get involved in work parties. This is about, this is about going on a work party. It's known as the Peter Farrell, and it's one of the old barges, which I'll talk about at a later date. But that picture sort of is a bit like 1916 and the GPO. If the amount of people said they were in the GPO in 1916, there's just no way anybody would have been able to move around it. People talked about going to up to do the Shannon waterway, that's Ballinaleck and Tullamore and all that area up there. That boat would be floating with the amount of people. All of a sudden, when this picture was found, everybody went very quiet. I might add, I wasn't on that particular work. I remember claiming to be. Our organisation is the Inland Waterways Association of Ireland. We have a massive website. It covers the whole country, and there's about 3.5 months of reading on it. You can just go in and open it up and go into wherever, and there's all sorts of information in there. We give out, our membership gets 4 magazines a year. I only had a limited number. I brought some here tonight, but I see they've been already snapped up very quickly. But what I will do is I will send a box of them to the library here, and you can get them for your next meeting here. It gives you an idea of what's actually going on around the country. Now, the other thing that we do, and we do very well, is we party. And that was in 2010, having another celebration. And believe it or not, there's 200 boats there. And in the foreground there, you'll see all of the old heritage boats. And we'll be talking about them later. I won't go into that. Now, canals have been around for a long, long time, and the Northside Canal was built by the Romans in 120 AD, and there's still bits of it still there today. And it's used to an extent, but has been modified and changed and links into other various places. Some of the people responsible for canals, the Chinese were pretty good at canals, and Chow Wei Yo, he was around 983 AD, he invented what's known as the compound lock, and or the pound lock. In other words, all they did was they brought water, they brought a boat in, built a compound around them, whether they were going up or going down. There was a lot of work involved with it. But then, back in 1373, Leonardo da Vinci, when he wasn't inventing helicopters and all sorts of things, he invented the mitre gate or the mitre lock. And the mitre lock is common all over Ireland. It's common all over the world now at this stage. And it's the one with the V. You can see the V. That the water at the higher levels lock the gates, and you can't make mistakes. You could do all sorts of damage with a compound lock, but with the mitre lock, you just can't open them. All you can do is drain them, but you can't open them to have bursts and all the rest. How does a lock operate? Real easy, simple as can be. It's been in Ireland for the last 260 years, and some of the bits and pieces we use are still in operation today. We'd say on this occasion we're going up river or up canal, and you open your gate, your boat goes in, you rise your level, and out you go. And that's how the lock works. Now that looks real simple, and it is real simple. Unless you're reasonably fit, it's quite hard work. And there's a few little tricks to open and shutting various bits and pieces, which I'll explain in a couple of minutes. And if you're going in the other direction, you come in, water drops out, and out you go.
Do they have lock keepers at the gates, or do you have to do the work yourself?
They have some lock keepers. They're getting rid of them by the day. We've a massive row going on with Waterways Ireland at the moment. I don't want to turn this into a political league, because we've been fighting with them since early in the year. They don't. Our viewpoint is they don't want boats on the canals. They just want them to look nice and all the rest. Because with having boats on them means you have to have people working on them. You have to have maintenance on them. You have to have all sorts of things. But They would argue that that is not the case, but their point at the moment is they want to shut the canal for 2 days of the week, and they want to have you in between certain hours and all the rest. So, anyway, this is what would look like a typical lock, particularly on the Grand Canal. And this one is in a place called Ticknevin, which is down near Carberry. Somebody mentioned it there earlier. I had another picture there. And that's what a lock looks like. I'm going to explain some of the bits and pieces. You see the two arms there with the yellow on them? They're known as the balance beams. And that's what you push in and push out to open and close all of these. They sit just in holes, and the wood just sits down in holes. They're held on the top by cast iron, and they're actually just practically nailed into the sides of the locks. But they've been operating for over 200 years, and they work well. They also use, to help lubrication when you're moving it, leather on the bottom, and it also helps to seal, and they put leather at the bottom, at the seal at the bottom, and they sometimes put leather down between them when it closes, because the leather swells and it shuts in and stops the water leaking. It doesn't work all at the time. All you have to do is go down to Clondalkin at the 9 o'clock and see the amount of water that's flying out through the whole thing. It's unbelievable, the amount of water that's lost. Those units that you see on the side of a lock are known as paddles, as they're called in England. We call them racks here. But you also have them, that's known as a land rack because it's on the side, or the ground rack, it depends on what part of the country you're in. And then you have another rack which actually sits on the gates themselves. There can be as many as 6 of these operating when a boat's going through. You need somebody experienced to know what to be doing if you're going to start using all 6 of them. People have asked me, how long does it take you to go through a lock? Well, my answer to that is, back in the 1820s, 1810s, when there was a huge amount of traffic on the canals, the lock keepers were fined 1 penny for every minute over 3 minutes that a boat was still in the lock. So that's how fast they could put a boat through. But you have to remember, those barges then, or boats, were designed to take water and for it to flow away. I wouldn't recommend it with the leisure craft today. You have to be very slow and gentle with them, because when that water flows in, it's flowing in at thousands and thousands of gallons, nearly in seconds. You know, you can actually have a shot of water going out there that will kill you if it hits you. But anyway, you can. I can personally, with my own boat, go through a lock in about 12 minutes, doing everything myself, bringing the boat in, breaking the lock, climbing up the ladder to get up if I'm going up, closing it, letting the water in, and then going back out again. I can do it on my own. You're not supposed to, but you know, when you have to and you can't get crew, unless everybody wants to sign up here if I'm looking for crew. Anyway, and you turn them up and down. They're a pinion and a rack. They actually lift up those, they're little doors, and they just they lift up and let the water in and out. Down along the canals, you usually just see one lock, but there are areas where there's double locks. In other words, you're actually climbing or dropping down by a good amount. A lock can be, the height that you can go up or down can go from 3 feet up to about 9 or 10 feet. But where there is a huge climb, you could have to be lifting 20 feet. If you really, really want to see a good lock in action, it's down on the Shannon at the power station. And there's 95 feet of the drop. It's in two bits. Yeah. It's fantastic, absolutely fantastic. There is another, in England you can actually see, there's a few of them, particularly in the Caledonian, and there's up to 17 and 18 locks all running, one after the other, all the way down and all the rest. But in Ireland, there was on one occasion 3 locks locked together. But that, and I'll show you a picture of it later on, it's way on the other side of the Shannon. heading for Ballinasloe. I have a picture of it later on. But usually the double lock is the hardest one. It's quite hard work. One of the most difficult locks is down in Inchicore because you have a skew bridge. You go through the lock and then the bridge goes a bit skew ways. And boats get stuck in it. I spent 3.5 hours stuck in it here this year. I brought a boat in, 107B, which you'll see a photograph shortly. It's a barge, and it got stuck in the lock. I think it's getting old and it's beginning to swell like the rest of us. But anyway, but I have to say again, Waterways Ireland let Dublin City Council in under the bridge to strengthen, and they reduced the curve under the bridge by 18 inches, which makes it very, very difficult to get through the canal, particularly if you have a high superstructure on your boat. Right, some of the early canals I've already talked about the first like, and then in around 1760, the Bridgewater Canal was the first canal to be started in England. It was opened, paid for by the Duke of Bridgewater, and he brought coals from around that area to Manchester, and then it came onto the river, the Mersey, and it's now known as the Manchester Ship Canal. It is absolutely huge, and if anybody's over there, it's worth looking at. That's the small part that he would have been involved in 1760. That's really all that's left of it. It has now been increased to such a size that you just wouldn't recognise it as a canal unless somebody told you it was there. And there's another bit of it there as well. Now, the Newry Canal, we were ahead of Britain in relation to canals. In 1731 they started the Newry Canal, and that was to bring coals from Tyrone and the other canal to bring it down into Newry so that it could be brought down to Connaught, the coal could be brought down to Dublin. Now, I talked about locks and all the rest earlier, and every canal has a summit. And in other words, you climb up or you go around hills, or you might have to climb up a hill and then you have to go back down again. And it's known as the summit level canals here in Ireland. And the amazing thing about it here, that the Grand Canal in Ireland, the summit is in a place not too far away from here, and you won't believe what the name of it is, the town, or the townland. It's Lowtown. It's the highest point of the canal. In other words, when you come out of Dublin, you're climbing all of the way out. You get to Lowtown, and then you go all the way down to the Shannon then. Or you're coming up to Dublin, you're coming up to Lowtown, and then you're dropping down into Dublin. Some people believe that that's where this thing came about. I'm going up to Dublin, or I'm going down to Dublin, or because that was the way people travelled 200 odd years ago. The Newry Canal, as I talked about it, it was built and it was a bit of a mess, and then in the 1800s they redid the whole thing again, but it has since closed, and that's part of people looking at what can we do with all of this. As I said, as an organisation we protest, but we have work parties, and our Newry Canal branch is out there working hard all of the time. They have 2 or 3 of the locks open, and they just keep pushing and pushing and pushing, as we did with the Royal Canal. The Royal Canal, just as a matter of interest, it took 28 years to build. It was closed in the 60s, and it took 38 years to get it reopened again. Now, it was all done by volunteers and all the rest till Waterways Ireland came along, and to listen to them, you swear they were after doing every last inch of it, but that's civil service for you to take credit for everything. Not just no civil servants. Don't worry, I was a public servant myself. I hastily throw that in. Stop digging holes, Mick. Okay, then the Coal Island Canal was started in 1372. Again, it was to bring coals again into Lough Neagh and back onto the River Canal to get to Dublin. Now, they did so much talking and fighting and all the rest. Most of the other canals could have been built at around this time. But Ireland being what it is, there's always 15 rows before anybody can agree on anything. And they weren't even having those big conferences now, public sessions and anything else. These were just boards of directors fighting. And that picture there is what's known as an inclined plane. And the last canal I showed you used inclined planes. It's the only one that's left in Ireland. And an inclined plane is where they would be to the canal. You would have where an empty boat is going up and a full boat coming down. They would use the full boat to drag the empty boat up. Beautiful example, if anybody's ever in Telford in Shropshire, they have a village over there with all the mines and all the rest, and these inclined planes drop down, and we're talking about drops of about 250 feet, which is a huge distance to be moving anything, and you're talking about moving maybe 20 ton on some of the bogies that they have over there. But it drops down into the River Shannon in a place called the Burden Bridge. If anybody's ever in that general direction, there's a fantastic museum over there, and it's not just to do with canals, it's to do with the whole area, the Thomas Telford and all of that type of thing. And the museum area and the shops and the whole lot. People dress up in the dress of the day, and you can only spend the money of the day. You have to change it, and it has all values, and that's it. It's fantastic. Just threw that in. That is another canal that's gone out of, it's gone because the roads over it and closed it off and all the rest of it. Just an example of some of the derelict canals that are over. Lagan Canal. This was built again for coals and all the rest. It brings them up to Belfast on the River Lagan, or the Lagan Canal. And again, here's another one of these barges that would have been used at the time. And this is what it looks like now. Certain areas, a couple of locks have been restored. It's going to take a long time for that canal to reopen into Lough Neagh. But if it ever happens, we'll be able to go from Dublin all the way down to the Shannon, either through the Royal or the Grand Canal, all the way up across the Shannon Erne waterway, and then onto which there is a commitment by both governments to reopen the Ulster Canal, and we can actually go into Lough Neagh and go to Belfast by water. You could have done that 150 years ago, but you can't do it anymore. It's like the trains. And it was the trains actually that crucified the canals, but sure they're being crucified by roads. Anyway, the Shannon goes back to 1755 when they started to look at the navigation and use it for trade and all the rest. And as I said, the battle was fought 60 years ago to keep the Shannon open, so smaller boats and leisure boats could actually continue to use it. And it's now, anybody that boats in the world come to the Shannon because it's famous all over the place. There's hundreds of power boats there. I spent quite a lot of time on the Shannon this year, and I was down there and I went all the way up to the Leak, and I actually crossed under the border, under the bridge at the Leak there, came from Anna into Donegal, and in a small dinghy, but I on my own boat there. But anyway, it's fantastic. The barrow. Now, the barrow was used for a long time as a navigation, and from 1759 onwards they were trying to make it more and more navigable, and it continues today, thankfully. That is a picture taken in Grand Canal. It's absolutely a beautiful river to go down, but a treacherous river and a very dangerous river. unless you're experienced and you listen to the locals, and they'll tell you when you can't do things. As you can see, very fast in that particular picture here, you can see all the boats down along the side. You can see in the background there all the old storehouses and all the rest, and but you have fast rolling weirs. Now, there's lots and lots of things happening there on the Barrow, and Waterways Ireland are trying to change things again, but they run into legal difficulties because there's various charters that have going back to 1731, which we are going to fight them on because we don't believe that they're doing the right thing. The Grand Canal. You can see it there. People don't actually realise how many bits and pieces are stuck to it and offshoots to various places. I'm going to go through some of them. Right. If you look at that picture there, it's the Grand Canal, Dublin to Sallins. It didn't start down in the Grand Canal Basin. It started out in Clondalkin at the 10th lock. You can see it in the middle there. I think we have another. I have, yeah, that area there. That's where the canal started. And like everything else, the reason that they started there, they hadn't got the money to buy the land to build the canals through Dublin. And it was just new and away. And they were getting away. Okay. Now, the canal went all the way out to the River Liffey, and the River Morel is there as well. And it was a question of how the hell are we going to get across the Liffey and the River Morel. The Morel bit of it was easy because they used that to take the water to fill the canal and keep it going. But at Sallins, and just beyond Sallins, it went from Sallins eventually all the way back to the James's Street, or James's, the basin in James's Street. And we're going to show you what they actually, that is a picture of, that would have been taken in the 50s in James's Street, and they loaded up the Guinness and the various sacks. You can see one barge there with God knows what it is, probably grain coming in, and then the Guinness has been loaded to go back out. And that's what it looks like today. The Lewis runs down there. Now that is an example of the type of house that the first engineer Omer built. It's still out there today in Clondalkin. It's in a little better condition. I went out to get a picture of it, and unfortunately somebody brought something not too nice across the front of it, but the locals have actually done it up, but the usual, whatever you call them, are out there. Vandals is too nice a name for them, I think. Okay. The intentions in the beginning to get across the Liffey was to let the canal run down into the Liffey, cross over the Liffey, and then go back over again. But it caused too many problems and all the rest. But what they actually did was they built an aqueduct. Just, you can see where they built it there. And that's what it looks like today. And it's actually one of the gems of the system. It's fantastic view. It's fantastic to go across it in a boat because there's two little roads either side, and cars and vans and things go up and down. But if you're high up in your boat, you can look down and see the Liffey. It's a fantastic place to go. It's just outside Sallins. It's walkable if people were interested in going there, and there's quite an interesting area all along there. Right, now the canal went from Sallins to Tullamore, and then it went to the Barrow, it went to Naas, it went to Edenderry, and it went to on the Kilbeggan lines. And I'm going to deal with some of these as we go along. If we start running out of time, I might have to skip some of the bush. Okay, we can see we're going from Sallins all the way down to Monasterevin. And then it went onto the River Barrow, originally in Monasterevin, but that changed a little bit further down along the line. If you watch the red, you'll see. Instead of going down along the Barrow, the river, it was problematic. It was very fast flowing. I've been down it a couple of times on smaller boats, and you don't want to go on that river when it's in flood. It was always a major problem with the barges because, particularly in the early days when there were horses pulling, there was no way of stopping the flood things. And so they built in a canal. They built a canal from Monasterevin down to the Toy. And that was the problematic bit. Now, that's the aqueduct that's there today in Monasterevin. And there's another bridge there that nobody actually realises that it's there. It's known as Moore's Bridge. It's a man has now built his house in there, and he uses it as a wall of his house, and it's a fantastic feature. But at least he's keeping it, and it's there, and you can see it and all the rest. But most people just drive across it and they don't actually realise that there was a bridge. Right, moving on, we had to get water to the feeders. This was known as the Blackwood feeder, where there's a lake, Ballinafad Lake, and that's where they got the water to start filling the canal. And then and as you can see, it's going into, most people have heard of Robertstown, but Lowtown is there.
Yeah.
The Pollardstown Fen, it was where they got a second source of water. The Pollardstown Fen is still open today, and that's where they take the water. There's 9 springs, and the water comes up out of the ground. It's quite a job to get into it, but I have actually led a small boat group down there, 28 boats one day, and it's unbelievable to see the water coming up out of the ground. It's crystal clear, and it comes up from about 10 feet, and it just comes up and then flows. The water is controlled by weeds, and that's how they either increase or decrease the flow of water as required to meet the canal. You just cut the weeds to a certain level and the water flows, but it's able to hold it in that catchment area. Pollardstown Fen, that's what it looks like. And that is another protest situation that took place when they were doing the bypass for the N7, which is now the M7. And you've probably heard about that snail that all us people were all whinging and crying about. That's not what it was about at all. They just picked up on that. What we were protesting about was what they were trying to do with Pollardstown Fen. They were going to put the bypass straight through the middle of it. And they did it in the end anyway, but there was modifications. But what was agreed was that they would put a membrane around the whole thing. It was the best we could get, and it's still operating today, but the water flow is reducing all of the time. So, the jury is still out as to whether it will work in 40 or 50 years' time, because like anything else, where you're drawing water, it eventually brings silt and brings all sorts of things, and it just clogs up, unless you can get at it. But the foundations of that M50 just go down 30 and 40 feet, so we can't see them ever digging a tunnel to let the water through. But anyway, I probably won't be around to worry about it. Okay, then from Lowtown, the canal was built all the way down through Dangan, through the Bog of Allen, which caused all sorts of problems, down to Dangan, down to Ballycommon, and on into Tullamore. Now, because it went through the bog, and the Bog of Allen was all water, and they used furze bushes, the yellow. Yeah, they used that as a base, and then they built it up with turf and all the rest, and then they used what's known as puddle clay. You've probably heard of puddle clay. And then that was the membrane. That's quite a very dense clay that doesn't absorb, doesn't let water go through. But from time to time, it was very troublesome. And there's talk as well back in, the the locals wanted work. So just cut holes in it, the water ran out. That happened back in 1989 and it cost millions to repair it. It was closed for the best part of the year. That's a picture of Tullamore. Now, in Tullamore there's a harbour down there, and it was a huge hub for all the work and all the rest. And you will see in the corners there's a little bit, there's not too much goes on in it now, because they don't want us down there. There's dry docks in them and we can't get into the bloody things, and every time you go down they have one of their own boats in it, and it just goes on and on and on. So, yeah. Anyway. Okay, there it is now, looking very, very busy. You see all the boats that are there. But that was, we had what was known then as float to the flat. The flat was on the Tullamore for 3 years, and we brought all these boats down, and each year it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And here you can see the harbour up on the top. Anyway, I'm going to bring it back to the Ringsend docks, the circular line. The terminus was in James Street Harbour, and the first lock is at Shore Road, going up through Crumlin for exit. And I just mentioned, we actually, in the last couple of years, we've been, as an organisation, we've been sort of communicating with the local groups along the way, and we've had a few little festivals as we bring in our boats every May. And not last year, the year before last year was, yeah, sorry. I keep looking back on this, last year's rally was only this year, but last year's rally we had a festa, which is an old Dolphin's Barn thing for a festival, so we used that word for it, and with the locals and all the rest. And we had what was known as the Scones Not Stones Festival, because that was a place 15 years ago, 20 years ago, you were allowed to be stoned with kids and that, because the boats were, it was only now and again, you know, they weren't, they didn't hear that shout like bring me back a parrot, which is what they used to say to the barges going out. They say that to a fella on his boat, now you get the answer, what colour do you want? But anyway, the circular line was built, and that was opened in 1796, and that painting is in the National Museum, and it's by a man called Ashford, and it can be seen there at any time. But it was a grand affair. It cost a fortune, and I think they were eating and drinking for 5 days on it. So that's what the politicians did then. Down there, they also built 3 what's known as graving docks, and these docks are dry docks really, but they were built for sea-going boats at the time, which you were able to bring, and the 3 locks to get in off the Liffey are still down there, but these were the graving docks where they were able to bring in their boats and carry out repairs to them. Also down in there you have the Waterways Ireland Interpretive Centre, better known as the box in the docks. So, and that's, you can see the marina there, and that's where we usually bring all our boats. You can have a look at these. These were overhead photographs this year with 77 boats down there, you know. And everybody says, I never saw a boat on the canal that we like to do. They're just not up at the time, but you can have a look at them later. Just.
There's another canal up on Stewards, I don't know where it runs there.
Sorry?
There's another canal up near Stewards, I don't know where it runs there.
Canal up at Stewards,
yeah,
in Parmistown?
Yeah.
That's a mill race. It's a different thing altogether. So if you want to pass them around, just have a look at them. And just get an idea of what it looks like. Then, I've forgotten the year, come back to me. They decided they wanted a harbour in Nace, and they built another, an offshoot. You can see the red there up into Nace, and that's still operating today. It was shut down back in the 60s, but around 1989, 90, it was reopened again by volunteers and all the rest, and we had a, you can see where it extended onto Corvally Harbour. There's a lime kiln down there where they made bricks, and the intention then was to continue from there and maybe down to Baldwin Glass, but it never happened. They talked about it too much, and then the trades came into it. That was the end of it. Now, that's a rally that we had down there recently in the last couple of years. It's usually at the end of October, 1st of November is when we're there, and it's worth, if anybody's in the area, to go down and see these boats, because the boats are open to the public and people can look at them. That's the little harbour down there. Now, that's the Corvally line, and that's as far as you can go. You can bring your boat up to the end of it, and you have to go back. But we're trying to get it open to bring it down to Corvally, because we've had a couple of work parties down there, and we've opened up the whole area down there. When you get up and look across the road, that's the old the N7 road, and you can see the boats. We brought them up, and we go there on a regular basis just to fly the flag and say, we haven't forgotten, we want it open. Right, after that, down past Edenderry, they opened up another canal there onto the Grand, and I'm going to show you a couple of photographs around the area. When you drive into Edenderry and you're driving down through the middle of Edenderry, that's all you see. But if you stop and get out and have a look, that's the line of the water there, and there's the harbour. Beautiful place. The people are fantastic. I've been on rallies down there, and absolutely fantastic. There is another aqueduct. It goes over a road. It's known as the tunnel, or the Blundell Tunnel. The Blundells were responsible for it. Anyway, Tullamore to Shannon Harbour and Ballinasloe line. When they got to Tullamore, they kept going on, and they went on to all the way down to Shannon Harbour. And now you're down to the Shannon. And that's what Shannon Harbour looks like now, with full of boats and all the rest, both coming upwards and downwards, either off to Shannon or coming from Dublin. I think my boat's somewhere down the back there somewhere. Just another view. And again, what it looks like now, there has been a lot of improvement down there with hats and tables for people to have picnics on and all the rest. It also has a dry dock down there, which never stops working, because it's the only one that will allow us to use. There's a few of them around the place, even in that toy in the places, but they've just become stupid about health and safety and all sorts of things. These boats, most of these barges and stuff, were to sit flat on the bottom and all the rest. But the things they make you do is just, it's unbelievable. And anyway, we won't get into that. That was one of the Grand Canal hotels. There's two others in much better condition. That's the one down in Shannon Harbour. There's another one in Portobello. You know Portobello? That was a hotel. It was now, I think it's part of the college now. Yeah. But it was also a home for nursing home soldiers, British soldiers, as well. And then there's one in Robertstown as well. Tullamore to Shannon Harbour and the Shannon and the Ballinasloe line. Now, they went from Shannon Harbour up to Shannon Bridge, which is the one with the huge big, there's seven arches on the bridge down there, and there's a big fort down there, huge fort, and up you went to Ballinasloe, which is still open today. But what they actually did was they went back to the original, and they rebuilt the canal, just as you saw there on that red line going up to Ballinasloe. Remember I talked earlier about the three arches, or the three locks? That's known as it's either Cochrane's or Coins as well. Can't remember. Getting to that age. Sorry. Come back to me, I'll remember it later. Fanning's Lock, that's what it is. Fanning's Lock, known as Fanning's Lock. That was 3 locks, 1, 2, 3, as like the double locks. So, but that's not used anymore. How they got across there was with a horse barge, and they cranked and used the chain to pull the barges across. And that's all that's left of the crank barge. It's just the bits that are left there. And the reason for that was engines were being started to put into, so they didn't need the horses and they didn't need the cranking. The engine was quite capable of doing. That is would have been the harbour in Ballinasloe, and that's one of the old storehouses. As you can see, it's been filled in, and there's houses there, and there's various small businesses, and that's the new marina or harbour in Ballinasloe. Right, there was a few other canals built from Monasterevin to Port Arling to Mount Mellick, but they have they don't exist anymore. There's bits and pieces of them around still, but I can't ever see it ever open. They weren't built very well. They were built in a hurry and all sorts of things, and there's lots of fiddling going on all over the place. And as you can see, that's what some of them look like. Now, down just between Dangan and Tullamore, there's a place called Ballycommon, and they built a canal there all the way to Kilbeggan. And the reason is there's a brewery down, or a distillery down there, known as Locke's Distillery. The Teelings, John Teeling, bought it some years ago, and it's been now sold to some firm, I can't remember, one of the big conglomerates. But every year, at least once a year, and maybe on an occasion, every second year, we all go down there, point all the boats to Kilbeggan and say we want this canal open. And there's no reason why it shouldn't open. It runs for 8 miles, there's 10 beautiful bridges over it, and there's no locks. So all it needs is to be pulled out. Now there's a local group down there now starting to do the bits and pieces, and it's the only way you can get things done, so do it yourself. Now that's the harbour, restored buildings by the volunteers down in Lochs, and there you go with water. And the only reason that that's there because it was heavy rain, because that's what it usually looks like. You can actually play football on it. So in the winter you get some water on it, but anyway. But they have, there's fantastic names on the bridges like Wood of Owe, and it's really romantic, the whole thing. I actually walked the 8 miles across the fields and all the way down with a horse, and I'm going to explain why it was with a horse and a cart, because that's Loch's Distillery down there. But they were the organisation with a couple of other groups, including the Irish Whisky Association. We bought 2 barrels of whisky, which cost us €12,000, and they came to Dublin, and they were called Lochs, age 9 years, Grand Cru. And if you look down the end, it says 59.4%. Now, you wouldn't drink the 60 proof, because whisky should be drank with water and nothing else. Or as my father-in-law used to say, the only thing you put in a whisky is another one. But because whisky should be drank at, it has to be by law in Ireland 40%. If it's below, it's not whisky, it's vodka or something else. But 60 is you can put a half as much water in again, and it's absolutely wonderful. We actually, you can see the horse on the right hand side there, and we walked because there was no way we could bring it by water. We just walked it with horse and cart, a dray horse, and down, and it was put on that boat that you see, 107B. If anybody's interested in seeing that boat, it's out at the 12 o'clock on the Grand Canal at the moment. It's out there. It was part of the Heritage Day the week before last, and it was used for demonstration purposes. And it's the inside of it is like
How do you get up there?
well, you can have to walk or get a bus, or you know. So. You can actually walk. You can cycle all along from the third lock in Inchcore all the way up to the 12th lock. There's a cycle path. Anyway, the purpose of this whisky was to celebrate the 200 years at the time. There's a photograph of, at that particular time, of the barges that were left. Quite a few of them have disappeared since. They've gone to the barge in heaven, and the lad here, he would be second in from the left-hand side. He's quite famous because he's appeared in quite a lot of films and bits and pieces, because he's the youngest of them all. He only worked as a bargee for a year and a half, and then he was made redundant. The rest of them worked various years, but Andy's still lively and well. And does anybody remember the 3 men in a boat thing that was on? Well, do you remember the bit where they were down in Mescal Road and the boat broke down and they couldn't get up, and they sent for the AA to start the boat because they couldn't start the boat? But the man that hopped out was Andy. So, but Andy travels all over the place. We still have reunions with these people on a regular basis, but the whiskey was done, and each of those was presented with a bottle of the whiskey. The bottle of whiskey, if you wanted it in a cask, it was €60 at the time. You will now get up to €500 on the internet, because there's only 2 casks done, so it was very limited, and it was judged to be one in the top 1% of whiskies in the world. So it's made it very, so I have 75 of them at home. They're all empty. Okay, I'm going to jump back a little bit to Dublin and show you that from the Ringsend dock all the way through. You see Sallins, we're just going to Naas, Corvally. We're not just to help people remind themselves, into Pollardstown Fen, all the way down to Athy, up into Eden Derry, Ballycommon, and the Kilbeggan bit still there. And the reason I'm showing you all of these and in that particular way is that if I go down the Shannon, if I turn left at Lowtown, I can end up in Waterford. I can go to Waterford, I can go on the River Nore, and I can go on the River Shore. 2 years ago we went to tall ships, were down there, and we spent 3 weeks down there at Sheep Point, and all the tall ships passed by there, and it was a fantastic time. The weather was great. But when it was finished, I went up to Inishtig on the River Nore, and I was able to go to Carrick-on-Shore on the Shore River by going into Waterford and looking around. So there's a couple of the people involved that are very adventurous, and they're liable to bring their boats anywhere, and some of them actually have the big barges, the 60-foot barges. Boats, I've been talking about boats for hours and hours and hours. I've used the word barge, but in Ireland we didn't have barges, we had boats. There were either boats, and if it was a leisure boat, it was a yacht. So barges, but people see them as barges, and the one that everybody talks about is maybe the Guinness boats that were on the Liffey, the Guinness barges. But Guinnesses, they were the only boats that they had, and they're now up in Lough Neagh, in the bottom of Lough Neagh, because they were used when they were finished with them. They took them up there and they used them for sand boats and things like that. There was a plan by a certain individual who has actually 2 boats on the Grand Canal at the moment. The Risk, which is the restaurant boat, and the Kayla, which is a new one he built about 2.5 years, 3 years ago. And you can have a meal on them, and bring you up and down, and there's a party boat there. They're worth doing if you know, particularly if you're going to the theatre, you can get on the Charlemont Street Bridge at the Hilton Hotel there, have your dinner as you go down to go to the theatre, the gas theatre or whatever they call it now. They keep changing it every 10 minutes, the names. Anyway, various boats. Passenger services began in 1780, and these were known as flyboats. And the reason they were known as flyboats was they used to use up to 4 horses, and they would gallop the horses to get the boats up to do 8 and 9 miles an hour, up to 10 miles an hour. And the boat would actually come up on its own bowway and surf on the thing. They were quite dangerous because lots and lots of people were killed on them, usually women, because the men trampled over the women to get out. But that was part of the reason, was the skirts that they wore. They become waterlogged and that's what drowning. But usually what started all of these things was either the horses fell in on top of the boats. They were just outside Castleknock, and 16 people drowned there back 200 years ago, or a little less than 200 years ago. And in various places there have been very big drownings and things like that. But the boats, you could actually on the Royal Canal get on the road up at Blanchardstown, or Castleknock as people call it there now. If we were on a boat there at 5 o'clock in the evening and be in Longford at 7 o'clock the next morning, you'd be travelling all night, and this is how the accidents happened. And the weather was cold and all the rest. The captain or the skipper was drinking and all sorts of things. The flyboats, passenger service, and then the flyboats commenced in 1834, and that ended in 1852. Then they introduced steam power in 1845, and I'll show you some. Here we go. You see the boat at the front here on the right hand side as you look at it. That's a steamboat. Steam engine, and it used to pull what's known as dumb barges. Now some of those dumb barges are still around today. They're called, there's float 1, 2 and 3, and float 1 operates out of Tullamore, and the man has turned it into a beautiful leisure craft for himself and his family. It didn't last too long, because the coal took up too much space for cargo and all sorts of things. So that is known as the Bat, and that was one of the steamboats. It's still in operation today. That's actually photograph was taken on the barrel, and that's known as the Fox. That could be seen and could still be seen down in the Shannon. The man that lived on that was a man by the name of Sid Shine. He died about 4 years ago. He was about 94 when he died. I don't know what's going to happen to the boat now, or who owns it or whatever. And that's another one. It's a horse boat, 4E, and I'll talk about the numbers on them in a few minutes. That boat, he was one of the boats that went to Belize this year. Along with, there's 38 of us that went in convoy to Belize. So basically, passenger service was in 1780, flyboats commenced, and you can read it yourselves. And then steam power was introduced in 1845, and oil engines introduced in 1910, which changed the whole face of things. That was the first engine, Swedish engine, known as a Bollinger engine. It was a single cylinder, 8.5 litre, 15 horsepower engine. And if you remember from that 3 men in the boat thing, it was very smelly, very smoky, all the rest, and it used to go, there was a noise, and it used to sound like a bop. It just went bop, bop, bop. Now I never heard, as a young person I never heard it, but I have heard these because the 145M still has the Bollinger engine in it, and they still run. It was an amazing thing. It was semi-steam, semi-diesels, and once they got it going, it ran all day, and you can see the size of the big flywheel on it. And some of the bargees were so skilled that the only way they could make the boat go backwards was to make the engine go backwards. So it had to be really quick when they got it down at the bottom. They would quickly hit the crankshaft or wallop and it turned the engine the other way. It was just, so, I don't know how they were until they did it, but they did it. That's 45M, the famous 45M. John, what's his name? He did way back in the 90s. I was on that boat when he did the canal. His name's but anyway, and these are what people remember as being the Guinness barges or the Guinness boats, but they were their own thing up in Loch Ness now and then. Anyway, we're talking about boat numbering and what all these boats mean. They're not called barges, they're actually either boats or yachts. Now, the Grand Canal company had horse boats and they numbered them from 1 to 1,000. And they had 1,000 of them at one time over the years, and then they started back around again. So you will see boats with, as I said, float 1, float 2. That's where they got that from. That's one of the early barges. Now, you will also see boats with numbers with B on them, and they're by traders. In other words, they weren't belong to the Grand Canal company. They were belong to individuals who traded with boats along the way, and they were called. Then, when they started to put the engines into the boats, they were known as motor boats, or 45M, or 68M, etc., etc. Am I overrunning time, or am I?
Oh God, no.
Yeah, we'll get that in a minute, don't worry. Have I 5 minutes? Jesus, I've got 5 hours left there. They said I was to bore the hell out of everybody. Anyway, I'll quickly go on. And then they had emergency turf boats during the war. They were known as the G boats, and they were numbered number 1, 2. But they were built from wood, and there's none of them left. They brought all the turf to Dublin. Okay, that's one on the streets of Tullamore after being built. And as you can see, there's just a couple of fellas pushing them around, so they wouldn't have weighed the same way. That's all that's left of them. There's only one of them, but that's all that's left. Right. Then you had the maintenance fleet, and they became e-boats. And I'm going to confuse everybody here, but this one, I showed you this one earlier. That was a 111B. It then became 23M, and it then became an engineering boat. And that's the picture I showed you earlier. So it's had a massive history. That was pulled out of the Grand Canal 30 years ago, and it's been an ongoing situation to get it back to that state. That little fella that you see in the front now is about 14 years of age now, and he has just bought one of his own barge. He bought one here recently for 2,500 that was sunk down in Tullamore. If anybody's interested in seeing all of the old boats and their histories, there's 2 books out there, Cool Metal, Clear Water, and Fine Lines and Clear Water. And that is the history of all the boats, the ones that still exist today, and they tell you who owns them and where you can see them and all the rest. The final years, 1950, the canal were merged with CIE, and then in 1957 the boy trader ceased. 1959 official trade ceases. 1960 the last delivery of Guinness. That man's name is McCormick, and the reason I'm telling you that now is because you have to remember it's part of the exam you're going to do. But I'm going to give you a little bit of information about him in a few minutes, another bit. 1986 it was transferred to the OPW. 1996 transferred to the Department of Agriculture and the Gaelic. Michael D. Higgins was the minister then, and he was the best minister we ever had for the heritage. Absolutely fantastic individual. The future, well, in 1999 the establishment of Waterways Ireland, and it's been recategorised for leisure and amenity. It's a cross-border organisation, and they play hell with us because there's 2 ministers and they're playing one off the other. And anyway, they've been charged with keeping these waterways intact and for leisure and amenities. But get a lot of money every year. They don't know no idea what the hell they're doing. We have to look at our canals as a living heritage. It's not something that you can just leave there and it's going to stay right. It's not going to stay right. It has to be worked on, as everything has to be worked on a regular basis. And it's something that we should have there for our kids. Like, you can see huge improvements down along the canals over the last few years because there's local volunteers going out at least once a month to clean up the places and do work parties and all the rest. And as an organisation in Dublin, we're involved with all of those, and we give them assistance with boats or tools or whatever, as Dublin City Council does and all the rest. But it has to keep going. Keep it going. The Grand Canal of Ireland, Route Delaney, would be seen as the total expert on the canals and the rivers and the waterways of Ireland. She's in her 80s now, and she's an absolutely wonderful woman. She was credited with the last leisure boat trip around the whole circle, the Royal and the Grand, back in 1956. The Dublin branch promote what we call the Green and Silver, where we promote people going around and we give them certificates, barges and plaques for the boats if they do it and all the rest. But Route Delaney, we presented her with a plaque as the second plaque to be given for doing it, because she was the last person to do it, and the person before her was in 1947, and he thought he was writing the epitaph of the Royal Canal. And 61 years later, I got number 3 because I did the whole circle in October 2010. It took me 10 days in an open boat, and I nearly died in the cold. And as I said, there's that man again, McCormack, and that's his son, 50 years later bringing the same boat out from Dublin, and Willie McCormack. And thank you.
Oh, lovely.
Any questions, folks?
Yeah, where's my third picture?
There's the answer to the first question, anyway. All good.
What are the lock gates made of? What sort of timber are they made of?
It comes from, it's called, it's a high density timber, eki. It's called eki. It will actually sink, it doesn't float. Because if you had something, wood in water, it just keep lifting up. So the eki is very heavy, it's very dense, and it doesn't float. It will actually sink down into water. It comes from the Amazon, it comes from, down there. The wood for a lock, and I was involved in the restoration of a lock down on the Boyne, which is another area. Just as a matter of interest for people, there's actually 25 canals in Ireland. Now, I only dealt with the Grand Canal there with its little bits and pieces, but there's another 24 canals, and they're all small and all over the place, but that's for another day.
And there's one down on Lever Park.
Sorry?
There's one on Lever Park.
Yeah, that's the Grand Canal, yeah, that's the one. That's the one we've been talking about. Any other questions?
What about
Sorry, there's just man behind you.
is there any way of guaranteeing a revenue or an income by using the?
Yes, there is. Yeah, the leisure boats. Yes, there is. But the thing about it is, as an organisation, we're prepared to pay a reasonable amount of money. But what Waterways Ireland are doing at the moment, they're going to close the canals. People won't stay on it. To work the canals, there's a certain amount of hardship on it. But the figures involved at the moment that Waterways Ireland are talking about, they're going to put people off the canals. For instance, as an example, if you want to stay for a full year down in the Grand Canal Basin, to look for €3,500.
Yeah.
That's
Well, the parking fee.
yes. Yeah. So that's what you're talking about. If you want to live out in the middle of nowhere on a barge, they're looking for €2,500, and there's no conditions, no nothing. Anyway, as I said, I don't want to turn this into I've talked all over the country about this. somebody like me who uses the canals all of the time, at this point in time, I pay €126 a year permit to use the canals, which is a combined mooring and passage permit. Now, whether I'm on the canals for the 12 months of the year, I pay it anyway because I feel it's not a lot of money. It would have been £100, and that figure was set in 1992. Now, if you extrapolate that money from 92, you're talking about 430 or 440 euros. And we say that that is a reasonable figure to pay. And it's not really, because there is no water, there's no electricity, you have to bring everything with you. Like,
services.
the services are diabolical, yeah. There's only a few places where you can empty your chemical toilets and all of that sort of thing. But what they're looking for now is, they're looking for 130 euros plus 160 they say we're only putting it up by €3 and €40. But what they're not telling you, that it's 160 to 1,600 euros to keep your boat on the canal. I can go to the Shannon and get from my boat on the Shannon for about €1,000 a year. I can keep my boat in a private marina with electricity, and I can have heat, and I can have everything on it. I have water, I have showers, toilets, the lot. But anyway, that's. But they won't talk to us. They just won't talk to us. We've done all sorts of submissions to them, and they don't want to know. Anyway, you were going to ask a question. Sorry, did that answer the question? Yeah, this man here, and then you. Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, coming back to you talking about the golf and barn crowd.
Oh yes.
I lived that area, because
Yeah.
I've seen it so much.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing that scared me ever going up the canals on the boat.
Yeah.
Because there was right a lot of carry on.
Oh, there was a huge, yeah.
That kind of thing happened today, doesn't it?
No, look, you're not safe anywhere today.
Yeah,
Look,
They're an open target, like.
Yeah, but they're actually getting used to us, and we interface with them all of the time. We invite them onto the boats now, and we don't have a lot of summer. But I could go 4 and 5 times from out from Ringsend all the way out to the 12 block and further on, maybe 4 or 5 times in the year, and no incidents at all.
You don't encounter anything like that.
The last time anything happened to me was I was coming in just before Halloween, and a big banger was thrown onto the boat. But I got to it and kicked it off, and it just exploded under the water. But apart from that, look, you can't account for. Look, things happen. Things have happened to me in Diamond. But nothing of consequence. There's a way, as people have asked me, the vandalism goes back. And look, when I was growing up, my objective, and probably most of the males here, was to break those cups and the telephone cables. Did anybody do that? I was known as the Ballyfermot stone thrower. The Ballyfermot stone thrower. That was one of my ambitions. But if you go back far enough, they were trying to put 10-year-olds in jail back in 1840 for peeing down on top of the barges as they went over the bridges. So look, it's just a level of, and as long as you don't call them bees or effers or anything else, you can have the banter with them and the slagging with them and all the rest, and you get away with it. If you
Because the Guinness's barge has got an awful hammer.
yeah, but
I can live that area,
Yeah, but you still, yeah, of course you did. But look, you can go up the Liffey today. Only 3 weeks ago, I went up the Liffey, and a big splatter of somebody's Indian meal came down on top of the boat. So what can you do? It just goes on. Yeah, look, it's nothing. A bucket of water washed it off, and there was no point in it. Sorry, did that answer your question? Or? Yeah. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Is the Royal Canal navigable from the Liffey at Spencer Dock? Can you get into it from there?
Yes, it is. The Royal Canal Spencer Dock is not tidal anymore. So even though it's not tidal, because of the shirts or bridges, and because they don't lift anymore, you can only get in at low tides and as the tide rises or drops. So you can get in and you can go through and you go under Sheriff Street Bridge by lowering the level now of the water, which we have to do. And then we come up to a railway bridge that was lifted up and down by men with buckets of water 100 years ago. And then they brought in this sophisticated new thing where there's trains running, supposedly trains running across it on a regular basis, and we have christened it St. Effen's Bridge, because it never effing opens. And it took on one occasion 7 attempts and about 60,000 euros for a specialist to come in from England to fix it. And as Dougie, where's Dougie? Dougie will tell you, in Stanley Street, because we worked together in the mechanical workshops there, all you had was PLCs and the batteries go on them, and when the batteries go, you just replace the batteries and they keep working. But they just wouldn't listen. They brought in somebody and they charged them 60,000.
Just a couple of points on that. The last time I was down that way, and it's a long time ago, there was a great big pipe right across the entrance from one side of the wall to the other, right at the entrance where it meets the Liffey. I don't know whether that's still there.
No, that has been removed.
It made the navigation of any sizable.
Yes, no. We were able to get down there, but our biggest problem was getting that bridge open. It's called the Lifton Bridge at Whitworth Road, but we call it the Effin Bridge now, and we always get very annoyed when we. And Dick Warner was the man.
Dick Warner.
Dick Warner was the man, and he used that when he went down the Royal Canal on the Rambler.
Yeah.
And he referred to it as Effin Bridge, and they went berserk. They did.
Are the shares of bridges still capable to open?
No. And neither is Sheriff Street Bridge. Sheriff Street Bridge is a problem as well, and it will never open. So we've been looking to have it modified that we don't have to be letting the levels of that, because it can take up to 2 hours to drop a level down to get a boat underneath it, and then it fills back up again. Because you need the water up the other end, because it's still shallow up there. You're likely driving over cars. If anybody's lost a white car, there's one up there at the moment. I was only up there 3 weeks ago, and it's a Nissan Micra, white one. I don't know what the reg number is, but anyway, it's there. Sorry, it's ludicrous, the stupid things. It's navigable all the way to the Shannon, and you come out in at Termonbarry there. At the Clondra is the name of the harbour up there, or Richmond Harbour. So, just as by way of interest, that Spencer was the same Spencer that the Princess came, same family. It was her grandfather or great grandfather. So he was a director of the Royal Canal. Which is another talk on another occasion, and it's interesting. Any other questions?
Thanks very much for that, Mick.
Right, thank you.
Wonderful lecture. I'm passing them every single day on the Lewis and at work. And switch back on your mobile phones.